Welcome, my dear students of 10A, to my history class. Today's topic is the same, the moderates. Today I am going to discuss about the achievements of the moderates, democratic movement, spreading political awareness. They exposed the true nature of the British, and finally Indian Council Act of 1892. Indian Council Act of 1892. The first point is achievements of the moderates, then democratic movement, then spreading political awareness among the people, then they exposed the true nature of the British, and finally the Indian Council Act of 1892. Now, first one, achievements of the moderates. The moderate leaders initially established a political ground in making contact with the British, in making anticipation with the British government with mild language. As a result, they were given some concessions by the British. So the system by which they introduced a system of talking between the British and themselves, it left a concrete ground for another leader, Mahatma Gandhi, in the long run. Mahatma Gandhi utilized this concrete platform which was left by the moderate leaders. The moderate leaders strongly demanded certain wrong policies or illegal policies, illegal laws which were framed by the Britishers. From time to time, under the pressure of the moderates, the British removed this type of illegal acts which they passed in order to satisfy the need and expectation of the people of India. Besides, the moderates recognized the rights of the people, recognized their share, especially educated Indians, and their share in the British government, and they demanded their share in the Legislative Assembly and in the Legislative Council as the member, so that they could work for the all-round development of the country in consultation with the British. Initially, the British did not allow them to be a member of Legislative Council, but after a long discussion with other officials, they decided to allow some English educated Indians to be a part of British administration, so that they must understand the motive of the Indian people and can solve their problems. And another point is that democratic movement means well-educated Indians in world history and philosophy, like our moderate leaders, establish an organization based on the best democratic principles known to them. This democratic principle encouraged the other group of people, but only the educated, highly qualified or educated people of India, they showed the pathway of establishing such democratic institution for the all-round development of the country. Now, spreading political awareness. Next point, spreading political awareness. Though urban in their outlook, they took their ideas to all Indians and increased their social and political awareness. Many people, like the wealthy businessmen and professionals, accepted and joined the movement, making it a pan-India movement. Many Indian rich business class people, traders, they had showed their keen interest to join this movement. This political awareness which was created among them helped Indian moderate leaders to strengthen their programs against the British, to strengthen their movement against the British government. That's why it also created an atmosphere or made it a pan-India movement. Now, Next point, they exposed the true nature of the British. Who exposed the true nature of the British? The moderates. The moderates exposed the true nature of the British. How? Because they were unable to get many concessions out of the British. But negative attitude of the British government revealed its true intention about India. People began to realize that the British were here only for profit and had no intention to give any concession to the Indians and the progress of India. That's why the moderate leaders, they strongly opposed it. The people also began to realize the true nature of the British. They remain busy in making their profit, in strengthening their financial ability, started draining wealth, and at last some concessions they introduced for the people of India under huge pressure of the moderate leaders. And next one, Indian Councils Act of 1892. Indian Council Act of 1892. Indian Councils Act of 1892. From 1885 onwards, when the Indian National Congress was established by A.O. Hume, and till the age 1892, the nationalist demand for constitutional reform were created around expansion of councils, that means greater participation of Indians in councils and reform of councils. In other words, more power to councils, especially greater control over finances. The people of India, especially those who are educated people, they wished to join, as I mentioned earlier, in the British administration as member of Legislative Council and Executive Council. But why did they decide to join it? In order to make certain constitutional reforms for the people of India, so that people of India must be benefited with that system. Main provision of this act were number one, number of additional reforms in Legislative Council and Provincial Legislative Councils was raised. In Imperial Legislative Council, now the Governor General could have 10 to 16 officials, 16 non-officials, instead of 6 to 10 previously. Some of these additional members could be indirectly elected. Thus, an element of the element was introduced for the first time. What was it? Budget. Budget could be discussed and questions could be asked. But there were certain limitations of it also. The officials retained their majority in the council, thus leaving ineffective and non-official voice. The reform Imperial Legislative Council met during its tenure till 1909 and on an average for only 13 years in a year, and the number of unofficial Indian members present was only 5 out of 24. The budget could be voted upon, nor could any amendments be made to it. The early nationalists worked with the long-term objective of a democratic self-government. Their demands for constitutional reforms were considered in 1892 in the form of Indian Council Acts. The Indian Council Act was passed in the year 1892 with a view to allow some educated Indians to be a part of British administration. Means allow them to be member of British Legislative Council, British Legislative Assembly, and at the same time the Indian educated people decided to give certain benefits to the people of India in consultation with the British regarding financial structure of the country, regarding the reforms of the country. Everywhere the Indians played an important role. Besides the budget, which was earlier passed unanimously by the British, before passing budget, the British was supposed to consult Indian educated people, and there was no amendment made by them early nationalists worked with the long-term objective of a democratic self-government, so that their demands for constitutional reforms were accepted. But ultimately, in the year 1892, in the form of Indian Council Act, many of their demands were produced before the British government. However, these reforms, whatever they produced before the British government, or whatever they demanded before the British government, more and more aggressive nationalist leaders highlighted them as failures of the moderates, because it took time to accept by the Britishers. That's why more aggressive nationalist leaders highlighted the moderate leaders as failures to achieve any concrete results through their methods. But even these minor changes not have happened without the initial efforts of the moderates. The initial efforts of the moderates, whatever they had adapted, it could not become possible if they would not take initial step for the all-round development of Indian people, and for the people who lived under poverty line, in order to ensure their life standard. The moderates, whatever effort they had adopted, it helped the aggressive leaders to establish a strong political ground during the later part of Indian national movement. Up to this, my dear. Thank you.